Bellucci's present, Hobart's present. Mr. Perkins is ill. He's not going to be with us. Also present is Mr. Kidney, Mr. Norris, and I don't know who's not here.
Would you like me to go through the list, council member, on the rest of the people attending?
I would like that, yes.
Okay, so we have Adam Norris, Brian Kidney, Cindy Gray, Erica Bennett, Nancy Cooper, Ron Luce, Sarah White, and then Steve Wagner is live streaming. That's everyone who's joined so far other than the committee.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is approval of minutes. Mr. Hobart, have you had a chance to take a look at them?
I have, and I'd move for approval.
And I second it. Okay. Item number, whatever it is, request for citywide financial obligations. Brian, I'm going to go out of order. I was thinking perhaps we could have Mr. Luce give his report and then he can get off. I didn't realize he was going to be here every month. I don't know that that's necessary, but you tell me, is that okay with you, or would you like to follow this?
Yeah, absolutely. The original intent of those reports are just to be as standing items for you to see them. Hopefully we get these to you several days before the meeting. You could read it, take a look at it, and then let us know if you have any questions about that. Mr. Luce, and also I might introduce Pam Coleman. Pam Coleman is our actual project manager who works specifically with the city. They compile that list together, and then both Pam and Ron they just get on this phone or on this call in case there are any questions. And so if you don't have any questions, they wouldn't normally just give you a presentation.
I don't have any questions. Mr. Hobart, do you? No, he doesn't.
No, I don't. No, thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Luce, if you want to just give your little report and then you're going to have a free afternoon, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. So, yeah, we don't have an official report to go through. However, you saw the brief one-page overview. The project is going quite well. We are completely on schedule with everything, as you can see from our snapshot of Microsoft project up there. The fixed asset project is on time right now. We have fixed asset training coming up the end of April. We've had great conversations with Tyler for the company that makes Munis software, and they know where we're going to need them, and we're working with their schedule to make sure that they have availability for us. The Munis software upgrade is going fine. There's a few little data integrity issues, but that's normal. So we anticipate getting that done in the next month or so. The timekeeping and scheduling software was actually, we met with over 30 of the timekeeping staff, and that was super interesting. So we found quite a bit on how the timekeeping works at the city, and there's some huge variance on how everybody does it. And so there's some work. Pam and I are putting together some observations just for the city's use. I think it'll be helpful. And then we built some requirements to make sure that when we roll out the new timekeeping software, it meets everyone's requirements, including fire and police, which have unique requirements. So we had great attendance and a lot of great feedback. It was really good to meet with them. Position control. I know Pam made a lot of progress on that. Recruiting and onboarding, same thing. We're chugging along. We established the steering committee with the members, and we're going to start meeting. I think our first meeting may be in the next month or so. So everything is going according to plan.
Ron, I just don't remember what position control means. I'm sorry. Would you remind
sure.
me?
And I can actually, Pam, do you want to jump in and tell her a little more about what you did with position control, or I can take it if you want, but
yeah, sure. So the position control was part of the software where each person basically has a position assigned to them, and it's really come into play working through the salary and benefit projections for the annual budget. So we've been cleaning that up. It was initially set up when Munis went live with payroll HR, but it wasn't really being used and maintained accurately. So we're now, Cindy and Erica have been working on cleaning up the position control records and making sure everything is in line to help determine what the salary and benefit projections will be for the 21-22 fiscal year.
And is that for each employee?
Yeah, each employee is assigned a position.
Got it.
That gives the details about that position. There's the salary, the benefits associated with it, et cetera, and how much is budgeted.
Okay.
Okay,
It gives
cool.
you more granularity in where planning your budget, because you're planning for a position that you may not, maybe mid-year you're going to hire for it. You don't have a name for it. And so when you're dealing with positions, it gives you more granularity and more accuracy in your budgets.
Awesome.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Any questions, Mr. Hobart?
Yeah, just one, Ron. At one point we were thinking about using, or you were thinking about using, a plug-in for the firefighter time. Are we doing anything extra for that, or is it gonna work as is? Just out of curiosity.
Great question. So part of what we're doing in building when we met with all the timekeepers from across the city, including fire and police, there was a scheduling component to that. So right now there's still some manual processes. Actually, there's a lot of manual processes when it comes to their timekeeping and payroll. And so we wanted to make sure that we specifically met their requirements. And so their requirements are wrapped up. And I think Pam and I have about 45 unique requirements to the city, and we're going to pass those over to Tyler. They're the company that owns ExecuTime, and say, hey, before we move forward with this, we just want to make sure, can you meet all these requirements for fire and police and some of the other unique requirements of the city, and before we move forward. So that's what we're trying. Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate the thorough approach, because anything they will very much appreciate, and so will we. Something done thoughtfully and carefully. So yeah, that sounds great, actually.
Great.
Sure did.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Brian, is there any other person on the call that perhaps would like to have their afternoon free that we should put them up? I mean, I don't know. You're muted, dear.
I don't believe so. I know Nancy and Cindy are holding on for the financial reports. No, I don't think so.
Okay, well then you're up, Mr. Kidney. Request for analysis. Well, someone messed up my agenda that I spent a lot of time working on, which just makes me crazy. Okay, let's see. The next one is request for analysis of citywide financial applications. That's Mr. Kidney, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, I got thrown off a little bit there also. So I am prepared to, I knew this was coming, so I did put together a quick presentation.
Awesome.
And when I say quick, it means Brian quick, which maybe is not quick for everybody. It's 20 slides.
Okay.
And it shows overall city obligations. And I'll go through it fairly quickly. The council has seen the electric portion of it, so maybe we don't need to focus so much on the electric portion of the debt. But I'll just give you a quick overview, and then we can dive down as you see fit.
Thank you.
So let me share my screen here, or attempt to share my screen. And I'm going to ask if you could see my PowerPoint, the long-term obligations and commitments.
Salute you, Ken.
Okay, thank you. So let me just start the slideshow here. When you're asking about the city obligations, I thought the best place to go to is the actual audited financial statements. And so these are dated as of June 30th, 2020. So there's a caveat in there in that some of this debt has changed. We've paid some debt off. We have a couple new leases. I'll point those out when we get there. But I always feel it's a good idea to actually go to the audited financial statements to just get a good picture basis. And so I've tried to footnote wherever I can where a person can find this information if they're interested. And so this is from our audited financial statements, and it shows the overall, this is from our statement of net position, which shows the overall value in what the city owns, and then of course then what the city owes. And this is a snapshot of the primary government current liabilities and not non-current liabilities. And when you're asking me about the debt and obligations, typically what people are asking for are the long-term debt obligations. And so I'm pulling those out for this presentation. And so I've highlighted which ones those are, and you'll see these on the next couple slides. So overall is 825 million. That is, of course, is the governmental activities and the business type activities. And the next several slides break those down separately because that we do account for them separately. But this is the one place, this page 22 of the CAFR. It's the one place you can go and see all of that and what that, is comprehensive, and it shows the total. It breaks it out between current portion and long-term portion. Obviously, the current portion means this is things that the primary government needs to be thinking about in this next fiscal year. That's why it's broke down that way.
Brian, before we leave here, where I'm looking at current position portion of long-term obligations, 27.3 million. That is not including like the Oneta contract and Nebraska City contract or any of our obligations, right? When you use the term obligations here, that doesn't mean contractual obligations, or does it?
Well, it means contractual obligations in that we have issued actual debt for, there's a debt instrument outstanding, but you're correct. This does not include commitments.
Okay.
And the commitments is what you're referring to, is the power purchase agreements and the
right.
commitments for pretty much the IPL. And that is a whole separate slide at the end of this, but you are correct. Those numbers are not included in the overall debt obligations on the CAFR. It's included on a whole separate, there's a whole separate section in the audit that talks about those.
Okay, so we would have to add to this page those pages.
The balances?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are a little bit different in that they're not treated for accounting purposes as the same as this debt, but yet you're right. They're also long-term commitments that the city has entered into. And so a reader of the statements would want to make sure they saw that there's additional money obligated through commitments.
And final question on this one page. This also does not include interest owed on our commitments, correct?
Correct. This is just the principal balance.
Okay. All right.
I will say included in this accrued line item is going to be accrued interest owed probably for the next fiscal year.
Okay, for this year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're correct. It does not include the interest and the actual balances down here.
Okay.
Brian, I wanted to clarify really for myself. So any of these items, any of these debt obligations are items that we have issued instruments to gain or to collateralize or to gain. In other words, these are backed by some instrument issued by the city.
Yes, in a sense, the long-term obligations both short-term and long-term definitely are. Those are actual backed by an official statement. They're being publicly traded in the market out there, that there are investors waiting for these payments from the city. The other two down here, the Opeb liability, those are claims for retiree health insurance based on our current projections, is based on what we have now and who's hired now and who's going to be hired or who has already retired, is we have the obligation then for this $204 million in future health insurance. And then in addition, there's also $94 million in a liability for our pension. So those two are based on what's owed to current and future retirees. But yeah, The long-term debt are the ones that have actual debt obligation instruments outstanding.
Okay. And then we've got another category that the proper term is debt commitment, or is it not even called debt? Is it just a long-term commitment?
Yeah, it would be called claims and commitments.
Claims and commitments. Okay. Okay. And that would be like those contracts that Karen brought up.
Correct. Also in that are going to be the self-insurance claims. Those are also kind of like I said, claims and commitments. And so we have some other claims up here, but not to that material amount.
Okay.
Is that stay well?
This particular one is $3.8 million. That is, that's for the Staywell Fund.
Okay.
And and then the $6 million down here you see here are going to be mostly our workers' compensation outstanding claims.
Okay, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you.
Sorry.
No. That's fine. And I know the council has seen, or the committee has seen these also. And that's basically, I'm going to go back here. That's taking these red items and just putting them into different things to give you an idea of what we've added and what we've paid off. And so just generally speaking, during 2020 is when we issued the $17.9 million for street improvement debt. We've paid off $7 million in TIF loans. We've paid off $254,000 worth of capital leases. And then I have a section coming up that talks a little bit about the compensated absences in the Opeb liability and the pension liability. So this is the governmental portion. This is the non-utility, non-proprietary, if you will, portion of the debt, which is $354 million. Of that, $15.2 million of that is due that we have been paying in 2021.
Say that again. I'm sorry. 15.4 million of that 354 million is what?
Is what we pay in the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Amount due within 1 year. And so,
I see
so going back to here on this page, we have the current ones. There's the 15, and then there's the non-current ones down there, and that's just showed a little bit different on this.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the long term, and of that, that's the short term.
Okay.
So these are the governmental, which are basically the general fund, the special revenue funds, and also includes the tax increment financing funds. Of course, that's the big one, obviously, on here. On the proprietary debt, again, we've gone over several times the Power and Light debt, but this is where you'll see this. And Power and Light also has current and future retirees, and so you'll see the Opeb liability, pension liability, and the compensated absences, which is the amount of accrued sick and vacation pay that employees have right now.
What page is that on the CAFR?
Oh, this is the one. I apparently do not have it as.
Okay.
It starts on page 63, footnote 7.
Okay.
On the CAFR.
Thanks. So it's a foot. Got it. Okay. See footnote 7. Okay.
Yeah. So this next 3 or 4 slides is just basically taking snippets out of the notes, the financial statements that start on page 63.
Okay.
So the Power and Light is at the 234 million that you see here. Water Fund has outstanding 43.9 or 44 million. And that's made up of revenue bonds and the same thing, the Opeb liability and the pension liability. The Sewer Fund has 106 million. And then the Event Center Fund is accounted for like a business. And so that's also included under proprietary. And that has bonds outstanding of around 86 million. And again, these two slides then add up to the one that you saw at the very beginning. So these next several slides, I broke down each one of these specifically if you're interested. So the loans outstanding that the city has, we entered into purchasing some property at 0% interest for $15,000, or I'm sorry, $7,500 a year. Looks like we have $15,000 outstanding on that one. Here's the 17.9 million that we entered into in 2019 for the major road and bridge and sidewalk improvements. And it also included, I believe, $2.5 million for large trucks.
Yeah.
Also in 2004, the city entered into what we call neighborhood improvement district special assessment bonds. And so the property owners within the Fall Drive sanitary sewer project, the improvements were done for about 111,000, and then through 2024, they're assessed a special assessment on their tax statements. We take that money and we pay the bonds off for them. So that's here is basically what you would consider as the city governmental outstanding debt. Here is a little bit more complicated one. And again, we've explained and gone over the outstanding tax increment debt or the economic development debt, but this is one place where we just summarized them all. Again, these are all listed within the annual financial report. Just running down, Cracker Neck Creek has outstanding 88.3 million. I will say this is the one that we are looking at doing a refunding on. And in fact, I think on April 5th, we'll be bringing more information to the city council at that meeting about this refunding. Hartman Heritage actually is being paid off this year of 1.8 million. HCA Centerpoint has outstanding 21.4 million. Eastland Center, 6.9. Santa Fe, and I know we've talked about Santa Fe quite a few times, that's outstanding at 7.9 million. And then the Drum Farm is at 820,000. Again, we've gone over these quite a bit, but is there any questions particularly on this page?
127, 140. Okay. Nope.
Yeah. Okay. We also enter into leases, capital leases. And so at the end of 2020, we had some radio equipment. We had a fire truck that we're paying off through 2026. And then there's some mowers, I believe these are, that were paid off right at the beginning of 2020, or towards the end of 2020. And then I did want to point out, after the end of the fiscal year, and I'm sorry, this should say at June 30, 2020, we did enter into a lease for radio equipment of 1.2 million, and then $40,000 for WPC leased a wheel loader. So those are not on the financial statements as of June 30, 2020, but I wanted to point those out. And then here we are getting into the electric or the utility debt. As I mentioned before, we had outstanding 151 million. As of last week, we actually paid this 10.6 million off. We feased it, and so now it's $10 million less.
It's what less?
$10.6 million less.
Okay, so it's 141. The total.
Thereabouts. I can.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
It'd be like 140.
$140.535.
Thank you.
This is way too busy, but I have been asked about what each of these particular bonds have been issued for. I'm just throwing this out there because I had it, but mostly you can see these are for production and transmission. 2012 was the interest in the Dogwood facility, and the other ones are mostly for production and transmission projects.
Brian, this is valuable information. Can you make sure that this is put up where everybody will be able to see it? Like, I don't have it in my materials, and I would love to have it in my materials versus going to the details of debt found wherever on this other site.
Absolutely. I think we could probably add it to the official minutes.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right,
That's valuable information. Thank you so much.
Okay. So we also have that then for the water fund. This latest, the 2013 D, it was a little difficult to find out what the actual projects they were for because they were all refunding previous refunded bonds.
Right.
So I don't have the specific project for them, but this current issue was refunding these older bonds. And there's a call date in 2023, so we'll be looking at doing a refunding of this after next year. The sanitary sewer, there are 3 outstanding issues. And again, this tells us a little bit about what the projects were used for. The 2013 C and 14 C, they were for the same projects. There were just 2 phases. There's phase 1 and phase 2 of system capacity and Rock Creek, Sugar Creek pump station. This one has a call date later this fall, and we've already started looking at this. We've gone out for proposals for underwriters to help us refund these bonds. So the council will see this coming up in an upcoming meeting where we'll be looking for permission to refund this outstanding $31 million issue.
This is probably off topic, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That $12 sewer bill that shows up every month on my bill, is that involved at all in any of these bonds?
What I think, I don't know if directly, but definitely indirectly, those funds definitely go towards helping pay the debt off that were used to make the improvements that were being funded by that $12.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. And then finally, on the outstanding debt, we have the Independent Center outstanding debt, and that's currently at $86 million. I don't have the call date on here, but I will tell you that this issue here, 2011, is currently able to be called, and we're working with our financial advisors to put together a refunding to refund this debt.
That very top one? Okay.
Yeah, well, actually, for both of these.
Oh, okay.
This would be an advance refunding for the 2012 Cs, but the interest rates are really good shape still, and would make that affordable.
Okay.
So the next couple slides has those really nerdy accounting things, but I will say you've asked me this in previous things, so I thought I would put this on here. This is a question about, if you remember on the first couple slides, I had all the outstanding debt, and then there was a line item called bond premium and a line item called bond discounts. For those people who are really excited to learn about this, here's a little explanation of what those amounts are and what they mean. But basically, when interest rates are low, people who want to sell the bonds for us, the underwriters, will want the interest rates to look higher on the actual when they're selling the bonds. And so they'll put a higher interest rate for the city to pay, a higher interest rate. In doing that, they'll pay us what they call a premium. And so the city will take those funds and use those funds for projects or lower the actual debt outstanding. And so for accounting purposes, you have to you amortize that over the life of the bond. So people looking at our statements would go, oh, you had a premium on this bond, that's why you're paying a little bit higher interest rate. Conversely, the same thing on the discounts. So when interest rates are really high, sometimes the marketing people will sell bonds at a little bit lower interest rate. And for us to get that lower interest rate, it's basically like buying points where the city would pay the underwriter to give us a lower interest rate. And it's the same thing. It's just amortized over the life.
Okay.
Okay. The next ones, again, and these are citywide. I don't have them broken down between governmental or utilities or by funds. So overall, the city has outstanding liability to all the current employees at $24.5 million. Just again, it's reflecting the amount of sick and vacation leave that is outstanding. That if employee left, that this is how much we would pay out.
Okay.
I've mentioned retiree health insurance. The liability is $204 million. We do not currently fund this. It's an annual. We just pay out each year. Some places will fund a trust fund. They'll take money and put it in a trust fund, and then the health insurance is paid out of the trust fund, and the city funds the trust fund to try to pay that to get that liability down. The city just doesn't currently do that. So this reflects the full cost of $204 million.
And that's as of last June 30, or is it as of right now?
It's as June 30. We haven't ran our Opeb numbers yet this year.
Okay.
So. Similar to that are the pension liability. And this is at $95 million is the net liability. This is a little bit different in that the state of Missouri has a large trust fund that the city pays into, and then the benefits are paid for out of that trust fund. The actual liability is several hundreds of $1 million, but because we have that trust fund, the net amount is brought down to 94.5, and I believe that's around 79 to 80% funded liability. So sometimes you'll hear that benchmark from states about what level of their liability is funded.
I'm sorry to ask this because I'm just, okay. So pension, $94.5 million. We pay into loggers and the employees pay into loggers.
Right.
And so this 94.5 million, that is just the city's portion, and it's not what the city has already paid into the trust fund, or it does in fact include the money we paid into the trust fund.
Yeah, it includes what the city paid into it.
Okay.
This is just the net difference between the value of the trust and what is going to be owed, what's estimated to be owed.
Okay.
So the net unfunded liability portion, then the net cost is $94 million.
Okay.
I can give you since you have your financials in front of you, I could probably give you specifically that. And that's on page 76 is when it starts talking about that of your financials.
Okay.
Okay. So just to put perspective on it, the actual liability is $560 million is what is going to be paid out. However, the value the city has in the loggers trust fund is $465 million. So we have assets of 465, liability of 560, and so the difference is that 94 million.
Okay. Got it.
And then here are the commitments that you spoke of earlier. This just lists. This is just a bullet list of what they are. And then the next page actually just kind of puts it into a little chart to kind of give you a better idea of the actual amounts.
Okay, so Omaha Public Power District. The debt is 125 million. Remaining city commitment contract, there's nothing there. Why? How do I read?
Okay, so that's a good question. So you're seeing two different types of commitments.
Okay.
The first commitment is Omaha Public Power issued debt, and Missouri Joint Municipal Electric Utility Commission issued debt. So these agencies issued debt, and the revenue that they told their bondholders that are going to be used to pay off the debt are the contracts with the city. So these are commitments the city has to help these agencies fund their debt.
Is our commitment 125 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the difference is on the column that says contract, there's not outstanding debt. It's just that's our commitment that we've agreed through the contract.
Okay. Does it change each year? Or is there a
The outstanding amount would change based on the life of the contract. So these are the amounts through the end of each of these fiscal years out here.
Gotcha. Okay. So Smoky Hills Wind Project 2, there's nothing under debt, and yet we have contractual obligations, 19.6 million.
Correct.
And that's payable in full by 2028.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Total city commitment, 394,520,000. Okay.
And that's the presentation.
Well, that was pretty depressing. Got it.
Brian, so when we talk about that, would you go back to your first slide?
Oh, sure.
Sorry about that.
No, I don't know.
So when you say long-term debt obligations, is it accurate to just call that the city's got this much debt, and then the rest of the slides you sort of broke it out and show us what made up those categories?
Correct.
Okay. On some of those categories, like the pensions, OPEB, those sort of rolling, continuing, that they don't ever have an end date. Do cities get those down to their liabilities or their debt obligation, or do they get that down to zero, or is that always going to have a balance?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. So most pension liabilities, especially in the Midwest, communities they'll be part of the state system like we are. So we're really very dependent on how the state manages its pension. There's, I think, out of the 50 states, I think there's maybe 4 that do not have a liability currently. I think I can't even. I'm not even sure I could rattle those off, but there's like 4 state pension liabilities or pension plans that don't have a liability. All other of those state pensions with the cities participating, they're all going to have some sort of liability. It's all based on the city's share of the statewide pension plan. So we don't have a specific city pension that we have to be concerned with, but it's definitely something that we want to, we keep track of. Certainly the people who rate and buy our bonds look at that pension liability. And quite honestly, it's not out of whack. That 94 million for the size of organization, it's funded at 78, 79%. That's not something, we're definitely not the worst in the state or the worst in the country when it comes to pension liabilities.
Okay.
The Opeb liability, this is a little bit different. Ours is a little bit higher than what you'd see in the Midwest. And that's just a function of the policy, right? So we have a really good plan for retirees, and this is the share and the way that it's been calculated. Before you got on the council did make a decision to move post-65 retirees from the Stay Well plan to a Medicare plan, and that in itself took $117 million off the books as a liability. So it actually saved the plan. Just doing that saved the plan 117 million. So there are certainly ways that you can reduce that liability, but honestly, this is what it is as a current policy. Now, employees that have started since 2000 and I remember July of 2018, or maybe it was 2017. I'm sorry, I can't. They don't qualify for the same level of subsidy. So if an employee who hired now, when they retire, they can still be on the plan, but they have to pay the full load. So yeah, this liability, this OPEB liability, it's kind of on a big arc. So it's going to hit a peak, and then 70 years, it's going to get down to zero or close to zero. So that will eventually get there.
Okay, I got you. So all the different styles and types of debt that we have, that cities have, of course, all this goes into any financial transaction that we enter into, meaning, like you said, bonding, leases, contracts, loans, anything like that. It all gets factored into our rating and our interest rate and our ability to borrow and all of that. Is that fair? Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So if somebody walked up to you today and said, Brian Kidney, I don't want 15 slides that I don't understand half of, but I do want the number for debt and independence. Can you do that? And is it this 825 on this slide?
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not trying to lock you down or anything, of course.
No,
I'm really.
That's what it is. I termed it long-term debt obligations, and usually when people ask me those questions, I'll pin it down like, well, if you're talking about the long-term debt obligations, it's 825 million.
Okay. So then let me ask you this. Is there, right now, we're sort of basically going year by year and refunding debt and new bonds and that kind of thing along the way. And we're, of course, about to do a big one for Crackerneck or Bass Pro. And is that just the best way to do it? Just a year or two before the call date, then you start working on a refinance? Is it beneficial for us to lay out a strategic plan to pay off all the debt, or what's reasonable, in a 10, 20, 30 year time period? How does it usually work?
Yeah, so that's what we've done.
Okay.
And I would say, unfortunately, I wasn't here when any of this debt was issued. But usually, when you issue, well, I was with the street debt, the 17.9 million. That was my first debt project here. So part of that process is, it's not what are you going to use with the funds. My first thought is, how are we going to pay this debt off and without impacting current operations? And so theoretically, every time any of this debt was issued, that is part of the thought process. And I'm sure every single time that something was issued, there was assurance, or the bondholders wouldn't have bought it. I mean, at some point, someone said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go forward with it." But yeah, like I think what you're getting at right now, we just have a lot of debt around there. So yeah, we definitely, especially as part of the Crackerneck debt, it was actually required as part of the underwriter. They're like, "Hey, we're not going to buy this bond unless we see that you have a plan. What are you going to do with the Santa Fe debt that is underperforming? What are you going to do with Drum Farm? What are you going to do with Hartman Ridge?" So we have a plan, and part of that plan is this, the funding, the reserve fund, the redirect reserve fund that we've talked to council before, and it'll be coming back up on April 5th.
The
Same
sinking
old-
fund?
Well, some would call
I
it.
don't mind the word.
Okay.
It's the same fund, right?
Yeah, we originally referred to it as sinking fund. I think we're calling it a redirect fund.
Okay,
Now, so yeah, that's part of that plan, is that we've taken here's all the debt that we know of, and then here's what we think is the surplus revenues, or the revenues when those TIF districts close. This amount of it would be coming back to the city general fund or the special revenue funds. However, let's put it in this fund in order to pay this debt off. And so that's the long-term plan. And at the same time, we know when those bonds are callable. And when they become callable, we know it's more efficient to issue new debt, pay off the higher interest rate debt, and continue the debt service with a lower net cost, with a lower interest rate. So we have identified all those, we've identified all the debt, not just on the TIF, but we've also done it on the electric, and we've done it water. And then of course, WPC, we've identified all that debt and when they're going to be coming up. So yeah, we've put together a pretty comprehensive plan on strategy.
So when you talk about, I hadn't thought of it like that. So when you talk about literally, so Goldman Sachs is going to sell the bond for us on the Crackerneck Creek. And so literally when they're going through the analysis with you, or you said the underwriter, so the bank that's funding it.
It's the same. Goldman Sachs is the underwriter.
Okay, they're doing okay. So they literally ask about every other TIF and the whole 9 yards. Like it's the probe, it's the alien probe, and they don't leave any stone unturned.
Correct. Between their analysis and mine, between the two of us, we make sure. They are more interested in those obligations that have the same security interest.
Okay.
So they're looking very specifically to that, and of course the general fund, since the general fund is a backing of last resort, if you will, for those Crackerneck bonds. Some of those transactions are doing really well. Eastland, for instance.
Yeah.
So while they know it's out there, they're not really managing and analyzing it. That's what we do. We want to make sure that we're being as efficient with that transaction as possible. But yeah, together, definitely. I mean, they're the first ones that like, what are you gonna do with Eastland? What is your plan for Eastland? So that they want us to tell them what their plans are, because we have to disclose how we're going to pay back everything, and we want people to buy these bonds, and we don't have to pay interest too high. I mean, it's the interest rate is based on risk, and so the more we're able to explain and the better plan that we have, the lower interest rate, and ultimately the better the citizens are going to be, because we'll get a lower interest rate.
Let me follow that up with, so we have a plan to put money into the sinking fund and fund the payback for the refunded Crackerneck. Are we obligated to maintain the funding of that sinking fund, or can it be meddled with, say, in 5 or 10 years?
Well, part of the financing is saying that we're going to have that fund. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure if it was meddled with, it would need to be meddled with and replaced with something that as good or better to the bondholders.
Okay.
right, we'd have to negotiate with the bondholders again, so we're not meddling with it.
That's right.
Okay.
You and I will be off the council, Dan, so this,
Yeah.
okay, I have questions. So of this 825, 807, 164, like, is the 127 million in TIF, is that included in this?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, where on that page is TIF?
on this
I'm
page
gonna
right,
write that down.
here, it is in that 148 million that you see right here.
Okay, that's TIF. Okay. The leases, where's that included?
The leases are also gonna, so the leases are gonna be included.
Okay.
The current year is included in this 15, and then the remainder is included in this 148.
Okay.
Well, it depends. I think one of the leases is WPC, so that's going to show up under the business type operations.
Okay, and that's the same is true of the upcoming leases that don't appear here, or are they not here? Should we add the 1.192 upcoming leases?
Yeah, they would be included in governmental activities. Yeah.
Okay.
Now I will say part of the payment of those, you know, we have interlocal agreements with other agencies. So we pay the debt on it, but then we do bill to, I think, Eastern Jackson County, I think the fire district. I think there's one or two smaller towns that they've gone in with us for that radio equipment. And so they pay a portion of that debt service. That's not, even though it's all coming out of the general fund, we send a bill to these other agencies and they reimburse us, but it still shows as our debt.
Okay, but our debt is not really 1.192,500.
Yeah, it will be. It legally shows up as our debt. If they don't pay us,
but
we
if
have
someone's going to pay me money so that out of my pocket I'm really not spending 1.192,500.
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, great. All right. All right. So the only numbers that are not included in the 825 is interest due on the bonds and the power commitments. Okay. So that's just interest. Otherwise, it's all here. Okay.
Right. As of June 30th, 2020.
As of June 20 or June 30, 2020. Thank you.
This will be lower next year.
Right.
Because we've issued less debt than what we've paid off.
Okay.
In 2021.
Okay. Boy, thanks so much.
Oh, Brian, I just had a little mini revelation, which is not saying much, but what's our number for issuing less debt than we pay? In other words, how much are we paying off every year? And so long as we stay under that number, we'll still be making a gaining ground on our debt.
Sure, and that shows up on these reports. Yeah. So next year this 354 will be over on this side, and the reason it was higher this year was because of the addition of the street debt. But there won't be any additions. It'll mostly be reductions over here, and so this is where you would keep track of that. Here's what we added, and here's what we subtracted. Now, the little bit unknown is the Opeb liability and the pension liability. Since
okay.
Those are very specifically, especially the pension liability is very market driven based on what the interest income was on the trust.
Okay.
But on the debt itself on up above here, you'll be able to see that right away because we put that on here. And then we already know on the electric debt, we're going to have over 10 million because we just paid off $10.6 million on the 2010 Bs.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not aware of any new money in 2020, or I'm sorry, in 2021 that would be adding to the debt side of things. So
okay.
Theoretically, yeah, the net debt should be coming down for the bonds. OPEB and pension probably will go up, but the bonds themselves will, because we're paying principal down.
Have you, I don't necessarily expect you to answer this now, or maybe not be able to answer it easily. Have you done any sort of calculation? It would be in my mind, a complex calculation of what our total debt ideally would be compared to our revenues and the general fund balance and, directions of OPEB and pension and,
Yeah.
can you even do that with any sort of accuracy, or is it?
Well, so it's about what we would use is what S&P would say, since they're the ones that rate our bonds, or maybe Moody's, if we decide to use Moody's to rate our bonds. And so what they have is they put together metrics, and they say basically a double A rated city or an A rated city or an A rated utility or double A rated utility, their debt to asset value ratio would be this, or their fixed cost ratio would be this. And so, yeah, we can compare ourselves to what Moody's metrics say that they would normally say is that's good or not as good or really good. So we do that. We've done that with the electric utility. We'll be doing that with the WPC coming up as part of this bond issue. I will say it's a lot of debt. However, we're a big operation, right? We're a 330 million operational budget. The difference is the amount of debt you have outstanding versus the value that it's adding. So when you issue electric debt, you are adding value of not only the assets that you're purchasing, but also the power, the power to derive more positive income or better service or whatever. The ones that are more on the negative side of the ledger are the TIF loans. So if you have, so Eastland, that would look at very positive because we're paying, our return is higher than the interest rate that we're paying. Cracker Neck, not so much.
Yeah.
That's, they're not looking at specifically how much debt you have. It's how much value you're adding with that debt, if that makes sense.
No, I get it.
You can't give us I think, like, I need to know that I am netting out. I'm 10% ahead of the game at the end of the month when I pay my bills, to know I'm in good shape. Versus I'm spending, 5% more than what I'm bringing in, so I'm still robbing Peter to pay Paul to make my bill.
Yeah. Right.
And on these commitments, we have to pay them, right? I mean, these power company commitments, we've got a contract and we have to pay that commitment.
Right, but at the same, on the other hand, I mean, we are getting value from that. We're getting electricity to sell, and so that's, hopefully we're paying less for the electricity we're selling, and so just having those commitments is not a negative thing at all. In fact,
no, and I'm not saying it is. Yeah, I'm just saying, just because they're not a number, there's no number there. It's still a commitment, and we have a legal obligation. We have to honor that commitment. We've got to pay those debts, even if they're not called debts.
Right, and you would consider, what would you have without those commitments? Well, you would issue more debt for equipment to provide that same level.
Right.
And that's why, like when S&P looks at our fixed cost ratios and stuff, they do look at those commitments because they know that you can't operate the level of electric business that you have if you didn't have those commitments, or if you didn't have those commitments, you'd have more debt. So that they do look at that. That's a very specific component and that's why they're on the financials. Our auditors are like, yeah, you got to have those on your financials.
Regarding loggers, Brian, you mentioned it's like 75 or 80% funded. Is that normal? Is that okay? Is that what we are striving for?
Well, as a future retiree, I would love for it to be 100%. But as I said, it's not the worst one out there, right? I mean, the other Midwestern cities, I think or states are all at that 70 to 80% ratio. there's plenty. I could do a quick search and you'd be able to pull up the those ratios statewide. I mean, there
Well, there's a benchmark. Is it within the benchmark? I mean, is it?
Yeah, we're not the worst and we're not the best. So
In the benchmark.
Yeah.
I mean, best practices is 100%. That's not gonna happen. I know that.
Yeah, and you know, looking at the financials for loggers, they seem very committed. It's you know the some of the big knocks against these state pensions is that they have unrealistic estimates of what they think the interest income is going to be and stuff. Loggers doesn't play the games that I think maybe other states may do. They seem to be a very solid and very well ran organization.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Hobart? Now that you've given me a headache.
I have a one more question.
There you go.
And I do not expect it to be answered today. Is it possible, Brian, to do a profit and loss on the IPL, that slide that you have for each contract and for each of the two the debts, the Omaha and the municipal utility electric? Is that possible to figure out if we're making or losing money on those contracts?
Yeah, I would. I'll need to work with the general manager there or the director, but I'm pretty sure we would have those numbers available.
If it's easy to do, then I would love to see it. If it's a bigger project, then I think that can wait for a while. But again, if it's easy, you're getting into your budget process or have been. So I don't want to distract from that with this, but
yeah, we'll check and we'll let you know, like kind of what the glide path would be on that, whether or not it'd be hard or like some.
I know it's fairly granular, but you know, it's in the ballpark of what we've been talking about as a council. So.
And Brian, again, I remind you, I'd love to get all your slides, because I keep all my notes in order. So if you could, be sure and send those out, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure we get this in the minutes. And then my apologies. I saw this on the agenda and I thought I could throw it together real quick. And
I'm impressed at what you did. I want the numbers. I wrote down numbers, but I don't trust myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a committee, Chairperson DeLucci, I would make the suggestion we recommend this or put it on a study session for the entire council at a council study session.
Okay, I'll make a note. Okay, it's 3:30. Again, by God. Mr. Martoma Perry, are you asleep? Are you there?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. You're so much nicer than me, Dan. Martoma Perry, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, update by you.
Out of sleep. Quick update this month. First of all, apologize for not being here in order. Few technical difficulties today. The updates I have are for both projects, the capital project and the overtime project. Work proceeds. I don't really, after last month's update on the capital, if there's any questions that have come up since then or anything you've thought of to throw at me, we've got time now, or they can wait till we make further progress on the report. And then with overtime, it's going down various rabbit holes and looking at different reports and just gathering the information.
When do you think you'll have anything? Do you think you'll have something in, I don't know, May for us to take a look at, to have a little bit more information? Or I don't know how difficult this will be.
The problem I'm having, frankly, is trying to compare apples to grapefruits right now because of the impact of COVID on this past fiscal year. The amount of overtime and leave and everything, this is an outlier year that you throw out of any other data. So I'm trying to go back and add a previous year to get a little bit better sense of where we're at. But then we get into the old system. So I'll stop whining now, and just, those are the rabbit holes that, anyway, that I have to go down and do a little bit extra checking just to make sure that what we're looking at is, it is an outlier, and we're looking at, $500,000 or $1 million of costs covered by, caused by COVID, that hopefully some of the money we're receiving, some of the federal money could cover. So I don't know how that will shape out, and that's a promise that it will, but, there's a case to be made that, we're spending an extra $1 million or whatever that is on those types of expenses this year because of the crisis, because of the pandemic. So,
what about capital projects?
Capital projects, I'm working to get the descriptions with city manager. That's been delayed a little bit with his absence. So hopefully that will be done. That'll pick up some speed. It's kind of hit a little bit of a lull this past month. I shifted gears without, didn't get the whole handoff made to the city manager. So we'll get there.
Okay. Okay, and fleet maintenance has been postponed. Okay, so we're at update by finance and administration for Mr. Kinney. Is there anything you want to bring our attention to on January or February, Brian? The operating reports?
On the operating report, I would, the one area that I think is of note that you would find interesting or very useful, the use tax collections are still doing so much better than what was originally expected. And if you look at the police use tax on page 8, we're looking like we'll hit the $3 million, which is where the waterfall lands. We'll fill this bucket up to 3 million, and then it spills over then to the general fund and other special revenue funds. It looks like we'll probably get that by the end of May, or probably by the end of April. So May and June use tax collections more than likely will be being distributed to the general fund and special revenue funds, in the same manner that the sales taxes are. So I would say that that's probably the most positive thing out of our financials.
And looking at page 8 on the February, February use tax, there's unassigned fund balance at the beginning of the year of $937,998. We didn't have a use tax last year, right? Or was that use tax money?
Yeah, that's use tax money.
So we're already at 3.2.
Well, not by fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fiscal year. Gotcha. Thanks, Brian. Do you have any questions? Dan, I don't have any questions. So do you have any? Okay.
Nope.
Investment report, Mr. Kidney. Portfolio value.
Brian, you're muted.
Of course I am. So the portfolio value is at $135 million, which is, again, our core operating is $115 million. Our short-term operating is $19 million. That short-term operation is what we do our day-to-day, payroll comes out of and receipts go into. The return, it wasn't as good of a return for February. If you look at total return for the core operating fund was negative 0.22%. However, the benchmark of who we compare with was at 0.38. So we actually didn't lose as much as the benchmark, those that we compare ourselves with. The overall yield through the end of February is right at 1.49, which again, I hate saying it, it's a great return from what you can get just being passively investing.
Right. That's right.
And that is net of fees, so we are happy with that.
Okay. Perfect. All right. We already did Munis implementation. Old business was a review of the 20% reserve in the tourism fund. And Mr. Norris and I talked a little bit about it. We're going to have a little bit of a presentation next month, I believe. And I asked Adam, what is the reserve policy for all the funds? I mean, I don't know. So maybe we could just educate me in April on, what's the policy for every fund and where do we sit in every fund, or is that too big an ask at the time you guys are doing budget?
Yeah, I have those. I have those now. It's general fund is 16%.
Yeah.
All other special revenue funds are between 5 and 16%. 16% would be for those funds that have employees paid out of, but generally speaking, they're actually in the published budget. I'm sorry, if you would look in a published budget, we actually have it listed. Here's what our fund balance policies are. So again, general fund is the 16%. Special revenue funds are 5%. If they don't have employees, or for their employees, the goal is to get it up to 16%. And then, of course, the utility ones we're doing separately. We're bringing those back individually based on that risk model.
So tourism would be 16%. Park and recreation would be 16%. Sewer, 16%.
So sewer is a utility which we would base. We're doing a different type of study. We're doing based on risk, just like we did with the
list for me in April. Just give me a list of what they are and what the fund is.
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate it. Thanks. And I think I probably got you guys confused because I went to my agenda versus what was published. I like my agenda better, guys, by the way. On your agenda is requested reports of specific budget line items. Is that the?
Yes, that's a report of those line items you'd asked us to keep track of last year.
Okay. So we are, how far in through the fiscal year? What percent are we? Like we're 60, 70, something like that?
67. We'd be at 67%.
Okay. So I see that we're really not spending money. And I'm happy about that because I'm so cheap.
And if you remember that report is only showing those specific line items that you asked us to look at.
Right.
I don't want to mislead you and say that, we're not spending money across the board, but definitely on these specific items that you asked us to definitely keep very close track on. Right. The counselor position, we didn't go back and fill the counselor position. The training, obviously, and the travel were all cut because of COVID. So this report reflects that. But again, general fund wise, we are looking at, we're coming in under budget on the expenditure side. And again, a lot of that has to do with some capital projects and some other things that we haven't done because of COVID.
Rather than have this report that spans 4 or 5 pages on my desk, for April, is it possible to just say, for example, general fund City manager, we budgeted 30, we only spent 17.5, so we saved 12.5. Just one line.
Yeah, I would, my staff would love it if we did not do this report like this anymore.
I would love it too.
Yeah.
Dan, do you love it too?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult to read it, and I don't want to create problems. I just want to know what was budgeted, what did we spend, how much did we save?
Do you want to keep?
I want to know for this coming budget year, to be very frank. I want to know how did we perform.
Yeah, we're knuckleheads, Brian, and it helps. The simpler you can make it,
Yep.
the
Absolutely.
better chance we have at understanding it. That's why the CAFR is an amazing document and super valuable, and all the numbers we always ask you about are in there, but to understand them and sort of what they are can be a Herculean task. So that's why we ask you these things, and you're probably thinking in your head, well, it's right in front of you, but putting stuff on like 1 page or 2 pages or a few slides like you did, that is supremely valuable.
Absolutely it is. And then the next one I have budgetary operating statement, animal services combined.
Yeah, this is a report that you had asked us to put together. Trying to pull it up right now, and the question was the fact that animal services is paid out of 2 different funds. You wanted to see what it looked like for that department among all funds, and so this report, we developed that report just to show more of the overall operation, regardless of the funding source. And Cindy wanted to make sure we got your feedback on this. And if this is something that you like, then we can work towards getting other department reports looking like this.
Ryan, could you share your screen and put it up so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the blue is the health property tax levy.
Right.
The pink is the use tax for the animal shelter. Well, the use tax portion used for the animal shelter.
Correct.
And then the green is the combined.
Right.
Okay, so we did a budget with the health property tax levy saying we were going to use $832,000 of the health property tax levy to fund the animal shelter. Correct?
Correct.
In effect, we actually spent $870,638, so we went over by $38,638.
So what you're looking at actually is the revenue side. So we budgeted of $832,000 to come in.
Oh, okay.
$870,000 did come in.
Got it.
And the use tax, we budgeted $750 because that's the limit to that fund, and what we received was $750. So the total health property tax and the use tax was $1,620,000, which is right here. So it's combining these 2 funds, and so the revenues are up here, expenses down here.
Where's the expenses?
Starting here.
Down here. Okay, I see them.
Right.
Okay.
So what you will see that we have health services starting to come out of the health property tax side due to us bringing back in the health department.
Okay, so expenditures, amended budget $1 million. So we budgeted $1 million for animal services. Is that what that means?
Yeah, we budgeted $1 million, but we're at $603,000.
Okay, I'm going to be stupid. How do we budget $1 million when we only anticipated getting $986,000? Is that creative accounting or what?
That was creative budgeting.
Okay. Okay. expenditures. So percentage actual of percent of the year, 66.67%. And we're at total expenditures of 65%.
Correct.
So we're pretty close. Okay. Talk about unassigned fund balance, 228 of 21, 413.
Right here.
Yeah.
That's the cash balance.
Within the health
For the health
tax
tax, that's 400,000. Animal use tax, that's 477,000. Correct.
still in there. Okay. And remind me, how do we decide how much is coming from the health property tax levy and how much is coming from the animal shelter use tax money? Or did
You
we
mean
not?
on the expenditure side of things?
Yeah.
I believe these expenditures, the director we only have personnel costs for those people who are directly working with the animal shelter. I think the vet and the animal tech positions are being paid for out of that.
And that was a policy decision made by the director, right? It wasn't a council policy position.
I believe it would have come up as part of the budget process, which was approved at council, but I don't know if they went into the detail specifically, but it would have been approved by the budget process.
I guarantee you that I raised a little bit of cane when they wanted to change the health property tax levy title to animal shelter. And that was not done. And I know it was not done because I raised a little bit of cane about it. Because I knew we were going to get our health department back, Brian. I really did. I had absolute faith we would get it done, and I didn't want to lose that money. Okay. So maybe that's a question that I can ask management in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Well, maybe I misunderstood. The animal shelter use tax is only being spent on animal services.
Right.
Right. We do have the health property tax levy. It's not. It isn't named the animal shelter property tax levy. I know
health. They wanted to though, Brian. They tried to, and I wouldn't let them.
Okay.
I remember it well. Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions, Dan?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Utility capital project budget detail. What's that?
Again, I think that was a report that the council had asked for. And let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah, these numbers are really small to read. Wow. Power and light, open capital projects. Water, open capital projects, sanitary sewer capital projects. Okay.
So we get the question quite a bit of, what does that capital line item mean on the financial statements? And so basically staff went through and identified every project that we're accounting for on the capital side of things. So this is a comprehensive list of all the capital projects that the three utilities are utilizing.
And this is as of February 28th, Brian. This is great.
I have to hand it to my utility CFOs and my accountants on this one. It took a while to get this pulled together.
It sure did.
But it's together now, and they're able to keep it up to date very well.
I'm thinking maybe looking at it twice or three times a year, guys. What do you think? Just to keep it on track? Or is that too much, Brian?
Oh, no, there's no reason. We'll provide this monthly. We keep this report now. It's an ongoing report. Oh. So we'll just include it as part of the monthly statements.
Excellent.
Unless I just heard a big groan from my.
I think I did hear a groan. So wait a minute.
No, I was excited. That's cool.
Cindy Gray, are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason for us not to be able to produce this monthly. And thank you, Cindy, for agreeing to that.
Okay, I think that's it. I think on our printed agenda. On the agenda I sent over that didn't make it to the public agenda for some reason, I had suggested new business, and 2 items was the single audit report on the CAFR. I thought was coming out in April.
That's
And
correct.
To me, that would be new business coming up in April, and heads up, we would like to see it. And then the IPL audit quarterly report, I think should come up in April too. I think it's time for that quarterly report, if possible. And then the tourism fund, also the 20%, the 16, but we've already talked about that, so that's for April. And then we were having a discussion about, I sat in on the Staywell meeting yesterday, and an interesting topic came up for the COVID money. So I said, gee, I wonder what we're doing with that COVID money. And I was speaking with Adam Norris, and Adam, do you think it's possible for us to deal with the COVID money?
Yes, I think we're kind of in the middle of planning for that right now. I think it'd be appropriate for us to develop some of our preliminary recommendations, and perhaps we could have a special meeting with this committee next week or the following week to go through those, and then we could present those recommendations to the city council.
That I would be thrilled.
Great.
If possible. Mr.
Agreed.
Kibbe, you're shaking your head. Mr. Hobart?
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean, it's really important, and
Mhm.
I'll make myself available. You guys tell me when is best for staff. And
Okay.
then Dan and I can look at our trial schedules. I can look at it right now if you want to tell me.
How about we provide some dates to the committee, and then you guys can look at your professional life schedules, and then we can set a meeting that way, if you want.
Let's do it now. Let's do it now. I hate waiting.
All right.
I am a now person.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. I don't want to really do April Fool's Day because it sends a wrong message, but I can do April Fool's Day.
Yeah, we could. How about April 7th would be a good date, and that would lead right into us having a document ready for the city council work session the following Monday.
Hey, I'm fine with it. Mr. Hobart, how are you on April 7th? He's okay. About what time, Adam?
Brian, what do you think?
Does 2:30 work? I have Brian and Adam's calendars pulled up right now, and 2:30 works.
2:30 is fine with me. Mr. Hobart?
Sorry.
Thank you, Cindy.
Deal.
It's okay. April 7, 2:30 special meeting. And the only thing we'll be discussing at this is the COVID money.
Sounds great.
Okay. Okay, so then our next usual meeting, because we just love getting together, how's April 23rd at 2:30? Is that okay, gents?
I will say, I do know that our auditor who's going to be presenting is on vacation the week of the 19th.
Okay. How
So
about the 30th?
30th would work, or he could have one of the partners come and give a presentation other than Chester if you want to have it on the 23rd.
I like Chester.
I told him you would say that. So
So is it okay, April 30th at 2:30, gents? Okay. Audit minutes. Perfect. Is there any other business to come before us today?
Yes, council member, I think the mayor has issued revised health orders, which would enable in-person meetings to resume beginning April 1st. So I think it's up to each board committee to decide how they want to proceed beginning April 1st and forward. So just bring that up for you all to make that decision.
I like in person.
And to clarify, they, regardless if it's in person or virtual, there will be a virtual option
Okay.
for people to fully participate in the meeting, regardless of how they want to attend that meeting.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, I personally like in person. I plan to be in City Hall on April 7 at 2:30 in conference room A to have a meeting. People who perhaps are not comfortable being in person, they can attend virtually. Mr. Hobart?
Yeah, I'll probably be in person most of the time too, but I just got my second shot yesterday, so I don't know by then. I'm gonna wait the 2 weeks, but
Sure.
we know that you're COVID proof, so she'll come sit right next to you if you let her. So
Okay, any other meeting? No? Gentlemen, I'm very sorry we ran over again. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, city staff, very much, and have a good weekend, everybody. Can we move to adjourn, Mr. Hobart?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I agree. Bye, everybody.